There's a kind of pain that doesn't bleed, a kind that leaves no bruise. It doesn't scream, it lingers in silence. It's the kind of pain that visits you when you're left on read, when your voice disappears into a room and one looks back. That pain is the quiet erasure of your existence, and you've felt it, haven't you? That invisible wound, the one that makes you question if you even matter. Science has a name for this. According to a 2003 study by Eisenberger, social rejection, even something as small as being excluded from a conversation, lights up the same area in the brain as physical pain. The brain doesn't know the difference. The body flinches, the chest tightens, and the mind starts to spiral. Did I say something wrong? Am I not enough? The silence outside begins to echo louder than any word ever could. And this is where the real damage begins. Not in the rejection itself, but in what you make it mean. Because most of us were never taught this truth. You are not hurt by their silence. You are hurt by the stories you build inside it. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, said, "It's not the insult that injures you, it's what you believe it means." And that belief? That's where the pain lives. Not in their absence, but in the meaning you attach to it. When they ignore you, your unconscious cries out, "Do I even exist?" And this cry, it doesn't just come from the mind. It lives in the body, in the throat that tightens, in the eyes that scan the room for recognition, in the heart that beats just a little too fast when your message is left unanswered. It's not just loneliness. It's a longing to be seen, to be validated, to be enough. But what if I told you that their silence was never about you? What if the lesson wasn't in being noticed, but in learning to notice yourself? This isn't about becoming cold or detached. This is about sovereignty, about standing so deeply rooted in who you are that their absence no longer defines your presence. Because maybe, just maybe, being ignored is not the curse you thought it was. Maybe it's the sacred mirror that reflects the parts of you still waiting for your own approval. Maybe the silence is not a rejection. Maybe it's an invitation. An invitation to come home. To you. Let's begin. There's something haunting about the quiet moments after rejection. Not the dramatic arguments or the explosive endings, but the cold, disinterested silence. That silence carries weight. It lingers in the air like a scent you can't shake off. It's in the unanswered texts, the glances that pass through you, the invitations that never come. And deep down, you begin to wonder, what did I do wrong? But maybe the question is not what you did. Maybe it's what you believe about who you are. The invisible trap many fall into is this: believing that someone else's disregard determines your value, that their coldness is a mirror of your worth. But Carl Jung would say otherwise. He would say that what you feel in these moments is not just pain, it's the awakening of your shadow. That part of you that still craves validation, that still begs to be seen. And when someone ignores you, it's not just about them, it's about the hidden part of you that hasn't been fully embraced. Picture yourself as a sacred temple, abandoned and weathered by time. The stones are cracked, the roof collapsed, vines growing through the walls. And yet, in that stillness, something holy remains. Because it is in those ruins, not in the perfect cathedral, that wisdom grows. That's where the soul begins. It's real work. Pain doesn't make you unworthy. It reveals the parts of you still calling out for love, not from them, but from you. And this is why silence is so powerful. It can be healing, or it can be destruction. And the difference lies in whether you've made peace with your own inner voice. When the silence outside mirrors the silence inside, that's when you find peace. But when there's a storm within, and no echo from the world to calm it, silence becomes a weapon. It cuts deeper than words ever could. So when you feel the sting of being dismissed, overlooked, or forgotten, pause. Not to ask why they did it, but to listen to what part of you is still waiting to be chosen. Rejection, in this light, isn't just about others turning away. It's about your own turning point. The moment when you stop begging for respect and start remembering who you are. You don't always notice when it starts. It begins quietly, with small irritations that seem out of place, moments when your reactions feel louder than the situation deserves. You find yourself justifying every action, explaining things no one asked about, defending choices you never needed permission for. And somewhere along the way, without realizing it, you've drifted. You've lost your center. It's subtle, but the body knows. Your neck stiffens, your jaw clenches. Sleep becomes a negotiation. And beneath all of it, your nervous system is sounding the alarm. These are not random aches. They're messages, whispered warnings from your limbic system, begging for a pause. Not to collapse or give up, but to return. Return to the axis within you that holds everything steady when the world feels loud. And that's the thing. The world will always be loud. But when your inner world is aligned, the noise outside loses its grip. The tension eases, the breath deepens. You stop chasing explanations and start embodying presence. One breath at a time. There's a simple yet profound way back. It begins with the breath, the 4-7-8 rhythm used by the Stoics and validated by neuroscience. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. This isn't just breathing, it's reclaiming your sovereignty, moment by moment. And as your body slows, the mind follows. Then, ask yourself, with compassion, not judgment, what did I try to prove yesterday that I didn't need to? That question opens a door. It shines light on the places where your worth was outsourced. It brings you back to the truth. You don't need to explain your value. You only need to live it. The center you're searching for isn't gone. It's just been waiting, quietly, patiently, for you to come home. We've been taught to believe that control means suppression, that to be strong is to keep everything inside, to smile while your insides tremble, to hold your breath when you most need to scream. But this isn't strength. This is survival. And survival is not living. True control is not about silencing what you feel. It's about choosing how and when to act. It's not denial, it's mastery. Modern psychology calls this self-determination. The power to act in alignment with your values, not your wounds. The Stoics understood this long before science gave it a name. They knew that emotional control is not about bottling rage, but about cleansing the mind before it spills. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, would write before facing conflict, not to analyze the other, but to purify himself. Because only a clean mind can move with justice. Only a grounded soul can speak with clarity. Anger will come. Pain will visit. This is part of being human. But between the stimulus and the reaction, there is space, and in that space lives your freedom. It takes only seconds to change the course of a moment. Pause. Name what you feel. Observe it without shame. Breathe. 5 deep, deliberate breaths. This single act, rooted in neuroscience, activates your prefrontal cortex, the part of you that thinks, reflects, chooses, and disarms the amygdala, the part that reacts from fear. This is not about being robotic or cold. It's about becoming sovereign. Because when your emotions no longer rule you, they become your allies. They stop driving the car and start sitting beside you, guiding but never hijacking. And this shift, though invisible, changes everything. You begin to move through the world not as someone at war with themselves, but as someone who knows they are no longer a hostage to their own storms. There comes a moment, not loud, not dramatic, when your soul simply exhales and says, enough, not out of bitterness but out of truth. You've explained yourself too many times, bit your tongue too often, smiled while your boundaries bled. And each time you silenced your discomfort for the sake of peace, you taught others how to treat you, not because they were cruel, but because you were silent. because you believed that holding it in was noble, that enduring was love. But repression is not a virtue. It is a quiet erosion of the self, a slow forgetting. And every time you swallowed your needs to be liked, to be safe, to be chosen, you lost a piece of your own voice, not all at once, but in small, almost invisible ways. Seneca said, "What is done from fear is not virtue." Saying no, not with anger, not with resentment, but with calm, grounded clarity, is one of the highest forms of self-respect. It is not a wall, it is a doorway, a sacred boundary that says, "Here is where I end and you begin, and I will not disappear to make you comfortable." And sometimes, paradoxically, it's in the moment you finally stop chasing that you find what you were looking for all along. When you stop begging for love, it no longer becomes a currency you trade your dignity for. When you stop needing approval, you start seeing the quiet, unwavering presence of something deeper. The love that never left. The part of you that was always whole. Respect doesn't come when you demand it. It comes when you embody it. And when your silence is no longer submission, but self-honoring, the world begins to mirror that shift. Not instantly. Not always, but eventually. Because when you no longer betray yourself to be seen, you finally become visible to yourself. And that changes everything. There are moments when the most powerful act is not to speak, not to explain, not to plead, but to walk away. Not in anger, not in pride, but in reverence for your own soul. There's a sacred kind of silence that comes when you stop trying to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. That kind of silence, it's not distance. It's devotion to your peace, to your truth. Many who walk the spiritual path forget this. Softness is not weakness, and gentleness does not mean staying where your spirit is shrinking. True spirituality is not about enduring what breaks you in the name of love. It's about recognizing when a space no longer honors your presence and leaving it without drama, without noise, without a final explanation. Just the quiet sound of your feet returning to solid ground. Loneliness, in these moments, may feel like a punishment, but it's not. It's a purification. Because when the noise of others fades, you're left with something rare, the sound of your own presence. And that presence, though unfamiliar at first, holds wisdom you've never heard before. You're not alone. You're finally alone with yourself. And that is not emptiness. That is sacred space. Epictetus called it moral autonomy, the ability to live in accordance with your deepest values, regardless of who's watching. To leave a room not to punish, but to preserve. To end a conversation not to win, but to protect. What's tender within you? There is no need to slam the door when the soul has already stepped outside. And so, when you choose silence, not from fear but from clarity, it becomes more than silence. It becomes a prayer. A declaration that your inner world is no longer available for violation. That peace is no longer negotiable. And in that quiet, in that stillness, something powerful begins to take root. The kind of peace that can't be disturbed, because it no longer seeks permission to exist. There is a moment, subtle but unmistakable, when you realize you no longer need to defend your existence. You no longer react to every comment, chase every apology, or search for a sign that you're worthy. You simply are, calm, present, predictable in your emotional rhythm, not because you've become numb, but because you've become clear. This is not suppression, it's alignment. A quiet knowing that what once shook you no longer touches the ground you stand on. This is how you know you've come home to yourself. You stop flinching at silence. Stop explaining your no. Stop waiting for closure from those who never gave you truth in the first place. Your emotions become less like storms and more like rivers, flowing, deep, alive, but never flooding your sense of self. You don't need to be strong all the time. In fact, it's the performance of constant strength that wears down your spirit the most. Because behind every unspoken tear is a human trying too hard to be unbreakable. But you are not stone. You are soil, and soil must be soft enough to receive, to grow, to transform. When you allow yourself to feel without drowning, to break without losing your center, something sacred begins to emerge. Not perfection, not invincibility, but presence. And this presence, this grounded silent dignity, it shifts everything. It speaks louder than any argument, radiates further than any demand. When you begin to treat yourself with reverence, even in the quietest choices, the world starts to respond. Not always immediately, not always the way you expect, but undeniably. Because the universe listens not to your words, but to your energy. And when that energy is anchored in respect, not shouted, not begged, but lived, something extraordinary happens. The world starts to meet you where you are. It mirrors your inner tone. And if that tone is peace, then peace becomes the language life speaks back to you. You've made it through the noise, through the ache, through the desperate attempts to be seen by eyes that never truly looked. And now there's only this moment. Quiet, still, honest. The world around you hasn't changed, not yet, but you have. You're no longer chasing. You're no longer begging. You've stopped trying to earn space in rooms that were never built to hold the full weight of who you are. This is the beginning of emotional predictability. Not in the sense of being boring or robotic, but in the sense of being stable, centered, unshakable. You no longer react like a wound. You respond like a presence. There's clarity in you now. A stillness that can't be faked. A silence that doesn't hide, it reveals. A voice that no longer needs to shout to be heard, because it speaks from a place deeper than volume. It speaks from truth. And if you're tired, not just physically, but soul deep, it's okay. If you're exhausted from pretending to be okay, from carrying weight that was never yours to hold, you're not alone. You were never supposed to be strong all the time. That's not resilience. That's erasure. Real strength has softness. Real courage allows collapse. Not forever, but long enough to breathe. Long enough to feel. Long enough to remember that being human isn't a flaw. It's the gateway to everything sacred. Let this be your moment of reconnection. Let it be the whisper that reminds you, you are not broken. You are becoming. And the more you treat yourself with quiet reverence, the more the world will rise to meet you in that same tone. You don't need to fix everything. You just need to stop abandoning yourself in the name of being accepted. Because the moment you choose your peace over their approval, something shifts and the universe begins to echo back what you've known all along. You were always enough. You just needed the silence to hear it.